Hey, hey, told me I better switch my style up. About My Money TV, it's your boy King Kaos in the building. Y'all know what it is. Barz2Brickz with my guy Mikey Swisher. What's up, Mike?
What's up, bro?
What's going on? We got another one. Man, it's getting almost. Hey, if they don't know, they gonna find out, man. It's getting to be where the interviews is picking up. We actually had this gentleman in the building before, and like y'all know, full transparency, I told y'all I lost a couple audios, man, and this is one of them, man. We glad to have him back in the building. We always like to let our guests introduce themselves, so we're gonna let this gentleman introduce himself today. How you doing?
What's going
Let
on?
them know your name. Let them know, a little bit about yourself.
All right, Josh Riddick, grassroots community organizer, building power for the people here in Indianapolis, Indiana. On the east side of the city, closer to downtown. Some folks call it near east side, but that's my hood. And excited to be here with y'all. Enjoyed the first conversation.
Man, thank
grateful,
you, Josh,
grateful,
man.
grateful to run it back.
Appreciate you for coming back.
So thankful, man.
Yeah.
I'm honored. I'm very honored. This brother right here. I heard about an organization. Would you mind telling me a little bit about your organization and how it started?
Yeah, absolutely. So. I work for an organization called Live Free USA. We are the affiliate chapter here in Indiana called Live Free Indiana. Came to this work after organizing black faith leaders to build political power to change and end mass incarceration, over policing, and police violence. Can't do that well, can't do that effectively without the folks most impacted. And in the system of mass incarceration, that's folks who have been on the inside. And I felt convicted by that, believed in that, and so had an opportunity this past spring to bring together some folks who have justice involvement and decide, do we want to build a particular organizing vehicle for us, for y'all? And folks said yes. They want to have their own vehicle to build power, their own vehicle to create change. And that's what's called the Validus Movement. So it's an organizing effort and entity under the Live Free umbrella, designed to give folks of justice impact and those indirectly impacted by mass incarceration an opportunity to create change, end mass incarceration, reimagine reentry, and build power for those with felony convictions.
If you don't mind, what does Validus mean?
Yeah, man, this is the dope part. Like, the leaders of the movement picked this name. I wish I could be this creative. Validus is Latin for strong and able. And so it was back in the fall. Like, we threw a bunch of names together and said, what do we want to be called? And, we know folks with felony convictions are often perceived as problematic and dangerous and all these sort of things. But this group really wanted to identify with being strong and capable and able, and to say that that mark on our record is not going to define us despite all the ways that the system tries. That mark on our record is actually a sign that we have survived. We have grown, we have evolved, and we're ready to push back on a system that's tried to rob and plunder so much from us.
Right. So because you have never been incarcerated, correct? So what made you want to go after and abolish this system?
Yeah, I mean, I have family that's been incarcerated, and I also grew up in a city in Michigan, Jackson, Michigan, that has the largest prison in the state, in the city. And so a massive prison was the backdrop of my childhood, the backdrop of my mama's childhood. Grew up in a church that really invested in the community. And what I found is folks who were homeless, folks who were struggling with addiction, folks who were moving dope, they all had felony convictions. And the pathway to a better life, the pathway to better choices was narrow and dangerous and hard. And that's because the system made it that way. And so I look at myself as one who, there's so many other universes where I didn't get out, so many other universes where I didn't, where the streets got me first. But a lot of people invested in me, a lot of people sacrificed for me, and I did make it. But I saw how hard that was, and it shouldn't be that way. I am not some sort of exceptional Negro. I'm not some sort of magical black person. I just had people make a way for me, and I'm grateful for that. But it shouldn't require a village to sacrifice itself. It shouldn't require a community to bend over backwards. It shouldn't require that level of investment to get out. And the reason we can't is because the system's been built to hold that back. So being in a community that was so clearly interested in putting people inside was that first driver. And then the other, I'm a person of faith. So the way I understand The idea that we would throw people into a cage, and then even when they're out for the rest of their life, say that they are a thing, is completely against what I believe.
Yeah.
Completely against what I've been taught.
And before we go any further though, man, I like to really tell you I appreciate you, because a lot of people don't know Josh is really rubbing elbows and changing the political figures' minds and about the idea of incarceration, because for so long Indiana has kind of, to the extreme, they're a little bit more I hate using it, but a little bit more sophisticated on the way they was doing it as far as in Michigan. Like Michigan is just blunt.
Yes.
Indiana is subtle
Yeah.
and act like they not about mass incarceration, but
Midwest nice.
there it is.
Yeah.
But you, from what I've seen, you effectively have been starting to change the thought process in how they're viewing it. So, what are some of the key characteristics you kind of look for to be like, I want him or allow her a part of the movement?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is, I want to find people who are clear about what they want to change in the world and why. In organizing, we call that self-interest. And it's got to be deeper than like the systems, bro. It can't just be like some sort of ideological or analytical idea. When I sit down and talk with folks, I sit down and talk with you, Mike, like you came home, and even before you came home, but once you came home, you made a decision to take your first week out and come to an organizing boot camp because you believed that investing in yourself and coming back home to be a leader was important. And when you were in that space, and this is what we often do, is testing people. Like, how are people going to react to this? How are people going to respond? Are they going to shrink? Are they going to lean in? Are they going to run away? And we had people in that room, man, who left the training because
it was too much.
It was too much. And the fact that they had to be like everybody else was just too much. And that's a data point too. But you were in that space and said, no, this really matters to me. And here's why. And you could tell me what mattered, what you wanted to change, and tell me why. That's a person I want to build with. Now, the further steps from there is like, is that person disciplined? Are they going to show up? Are they going to be rigorous about their own development? And if they are, I want to keep building with them. And so you've been one of them folks. So you came home, showed up at the boot camp, and I've worked with a lot of folks over the years who come home and they're on fire about something. Because inside they saw how broken it was. They saw a lot of broken men or a lot of broken women. And they come home and say, I want to be about that change. And then, they get the nonprofit, or they get the job, or they get the radio spot, or they get to be at the job fair. They get an opportunity. And then I'm gone. They leave and they disappear. And, you've been really, really clear that I need to build power. And that if I want to make the changes that I know need to happen in my community, I'm going to need more power. And I think a lot of people, I'll stop talking after this, but I think a lot of people get confused with power and access.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Access lets you get into a room. Power lets you change the dynamics of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have been robbed of power and access, sometimes access feels like it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And access is individual focused, right? Like you can rub shoulders with the elected official and get tickets to the box seats and be like, I don't want to mess this up. Access has some risks. Where power, on the other hand, like we say in organizing all the time, power respects power. Power is interested in the change. It's not rooted in individualism. It's rooted in collective engagement. And so, yeah, I might upset this person, but I know that they want this thing and I want this thing, so we're going to get there. And, you've modeled that. And that's what I'm looking for in folks.
I appreciate that. And I want, because, unfortunately, I come with a background, right? And that's what I want people like that's have my type of background to understand. Let's utilize our power in the right way, because I used it for so many years in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it's important that brothers that really want to help the community let's start in your specific area or your specific section.
Yeah.
You can model or change that effectively
Mm-hmm.
by doing what you say you're gonna do,
Mm-hmm.
because that's important.
Let's be clear, man. Barz2Brickz is a platform to consolidate those resources. I think I want people to understand that it's about bringing the resources together for people who have been justice impacted or been incarcerated, have a felony or has came home to kind of build those resources. So I wanted to know, even in your movement, since you haven't been incarcerated, are you looking for people who've been justice impacted by being incarcerated, or are you looking for people who haven't been incarcerated who still want to help make that change?
Yeah, it's a good question. The easiest way to say it is we want people who want to build power, and we're going to center people who have been directly impacted.
Right.
So, I feel the same way organizing church folks. There's just not enough black church folks in this country to make the type of changes we need to make. Now we're going to center that voice, but we need other folks to be at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So same with Validus. Right? We got folks in our movement who have not had any direct justice involvement, but they understand the cause and the need, and most importantly, the desire for power. Some folks there aren't even interested in ending mass incarceration. They're there because they want to, fix this system or this system, and they know that this is a pathway to build power.
Absolutely.
So we're going to center those particular voices and prioritize those voices of
like
people
that.
who have been impacted. But we also have to be clear that if we really want to make change and really want to build power, it can't be exclusively those. There's a lot of folks, too many people that have been hit with a felony conviction.
Absolutely.
But there's still not enough to tip the scale.
And the reason why I asked that is because I know a lot of the recent podcasts we've have had people who have been directly justice impacted by actually being incarcerated. And, some of them had did time with my brother. But at the same time, 99.9% of the people have been justice impacted in our communities are like you and me. We may not. I've done short, county, something like that. But they haven't did long-term stints. But they need to understand what it does and, the impact on the community when these guys come home, when these ladies come home, and what it does to the family structure. You know what I mean? And I wanted you to talk to that point a little bit because I think you've been impacted in that way, and I think that story is powerful to hear.
Absolutely. I mean, my dad was in county a few times, and just, and did some things that aren't great to get there.
Right.
And sometimes didn't always matter. I got family who was on the verge of being in prison. I got friends who are incarcerated. I got friends from high school that I'm never going to get out. And if they do, they're going right back. And so the fabric of communities and the fabric of families being like shredded and torn through that is so difficult. And I think the fear because it's hit so close. I'm so keenly aware of the possibilities, and my family's been so keenly aware. One example I often give is, and I talked about this last time I was here, because my family has had that interaction, those brushes with the justice system. My family has historically done things in a way to avoid that. Yeah. And our reaction to that puts an added burden on people who are on the outside. So as a kid, my uncle who struggled with crack cocaine, my dad moved him in with us. My mom and sister and I ended up running away. My mom was like, I ain't gonna use him. And I think that's the right move as a parent. For my dad, he was making a calculus of how do I do something deeply loving for my brother and still hold my family together and also not understanding addiction. And so to avoid my uncle from being incarcerated, because in the early 2000s there wasn't no treatment centers, not for real. And so the option for my uncle was to go to prison. And the way that they have set up laws around crack cocaine, you get hit heavy with a felony just for having it. And he didn't get treatment, he would have got thrown into a cage. So my dad moves him in, right? It's a deeply loving thing to do to try and help your brother. It also didn't help him the way it needed to, because moving houses is not a treatment option. It's just a relocation.
Yeah.
What my uncle deserved was treatment, but my family was trying to avoid incarceration. So I know a lot of families that do that, right? They're shuffling people in homes or moving people around. I got a cousin in the DMV area who Last time I saw him, he couldn't even drive nowhere because someone hit his car on a drive-by. And I want him to be okay. I want him to be safe, but I watch my family adjust and make moves and shifts at the expense of our money, at the expense of our health, the expense of our homes, the expense of our peace, the expense of our mental health, because that system just feels so looming, and trying to avoid it feels like a chess game we can't win.
I think other nationalities don't understand that tense of fear that we get in the black community. You know, I've lived in a neighborhood almost all my life. My mother owns a home in the neighborhood that we grew up in, and you still, no matter if you're doing absolutely 100% right, when you see the police behind you, you still get a tense feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's just innate,
Right.
and it shouldn't be that way, because I'm around with taxpaying citizens who've never got in trouble in their life. My brothers, my sisters, they've never been in any trouble in their life. I'm the exception to that rule in my own home, but they still have that same fear, and that's ridiculous, man. I think that's something that is need to be heard, that we all are impacted in some way by the judicial system and what's going on. Not just Indiana, man. I think that's the bigger picture that a lot of people are not seeing. All over the world, mass incarceration is happening in the United States. It's not an Indiana thing.
Yes, and Indiana is hard.
It's hard though.
And that's why I commend you for taking on this tall task.
Yeah.
Because at the last meeting, I seen one of our brothers get kind of frustrated. Because of the progress these other states have been able to make. So let me ask you this, Josh. What do you feel the climate of our political ideology around mass incarceration is it? Do you feel like we can tip it, or are they gonna still kind of stay with the same way no matter how we push? Because with me being on the inside, I've seen a lot of these come from the bottom, from COs all the way to the classification to assistant deputy commissioners and all that. So I understand the mentality they have. Do you feel like this movement can be able to effectively show them the change that's needed and not just be pushed on about money?
Yeah. So I think the necessity of our movement is going to be really effective in the opportunity to tell powerful stories about why people get incarcerated and what that experience is. There is intentional efforts by politicians, by our culture, to make prison and those in it seem a certain type of way. We met with a politician with the Black Church Coalition a few weeks ago to stop. There was a bill that's now dead and I hope stays dead with the Indiana State House. You never know till the end of session. But the bill would criminalize people who are sleeping outside who are homeless.
Yeah.
And we talked to the chair of the committee seeing the bill. And so how, you apparently a person of faith. How does that work? He said, well, I accepted Jesus when I was 14, and Jesus said, take care of the homeless person. And it is in my faith, I can't walk past a person sleeping outside and want to do everything in my power to get them safe. So if that means they got to go to jail for a night or two to get a warm bed and some food, I think that's the most loving thing I can do.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's ridiculous. That's scary.
It's scary, but it's also like that's not an outlandish to a lot of people. Because what jail is and who belongs there and what it's for.
We've been brainwashed.
3 hots and a cot.
Yeah.
But that don't sound too bad, actually.
That's brainwashed.
And so And the reason for that, there's not been in Indiana large scale organizing to tell the different story about what happens on the inside and what that's like, and how easy it is to get caught up in it, and how to get out, and how difficult that is. Some of the leaders of our movement tell stories about what it's like. That will change someone's perspective.
Absolutely.
And we've watched it happen. Watching some folks who I would consider pretty adamant about the necessity of prisons be like, ooh, I don't know about that. Like, watch people make these shifts. Even with our own movement sometimes, like, we have still political education to do where I listen to people talk. And, you know, we say certain people need to be in and certain people don't, and certain charges are bad. And we never get to, like, the storytelling that actually is why people are on the inside. So I think the culture and the political, you know, I've been taught that, like, the popular culture is usually 10 years ahead. Politics are usually 10 years behind. So you
Great
always
assessment.
have this tension of, like, politics are operating with this. You know, like, if I get, there's a lot of different legislation in Indiana that, like, we still fighting over this stuff. Like, are we for real?
Yeah.
And, like, the rest of the world's moved on. So how you speed that up is you activate powerful storytelling in the popular culture, in cultural spaces, that then animate that popular culture and the people within it to go push on that political system. And we don't have enough people doing that to scale for folks who have been justice impacted. And there's a lot of different arguments. There's a human rights argument to be made. There's a financial argument to be made. There's a community wellness and public safety argument to be made. There's a lot of different ways we could push it. But we got to build the platform and the vehicle strong enough to amplify that message.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, this, I want to be clear too, you know, and it took me many years of pondering, right? And I was at first baffled by my conclusion, but I understood my maturity as well. So, and this is going to sound funny, and I've never even voiced this to bro, you know, there's people that need to be incarcerated. Let's get this understood. But it's how you treat them. It's how you try to rectify their thinking is the problem with incarceration. And it shouldn't be, in my opinion, it shouldn't be a financial gain. Like, this should be, as you alluded to, a wellness. It's a, because a lot of the issues with brothers going or sisters going to prison is a mental health issue.
I was
You-
thinking
you-
that
you
when
s-
Josh was speaking.
And so, this is what happens, bro. You get incarcerated, and they never done an assessment. I never had a mental health assessment done until I voluntarily went in. You know, and one of my parole agents, when I first came home, suggested it. Like, maybe you need to go get some help. And I'm like, man, this dude tripping. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I didn't think about it. Man, he right. Because of the effects. And maybe I had an issue when we was growing up that I didn't even know or was ever taken care of. So what I'm saying to you, a lot of times that's what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, and it everything shouldn't be criminalized because of our culture, and that's what we have to understand, that certain people need to be, because I done been around.
Well,
It has to be rules, and it has to be structured. The problem with mass incarceration overall, and y'all can stop me when I'm lying, is we don't have, it's no rehabilitation.
Absolutely.
And we don't have any reentry. If we're gonna incarcerate you and re-release you into the society, and you are a
He should be
citizen
healthy.
again, you need to be
That
healthy.
he or
in the-
she should
and
be
he or
healthy.
she should be healthy in the mind and in the spirit in so many ways. Because if you coming back home to be a productive part of your family and of the community, then that has to be addressed. Your you know, whatever your issue may be, and we don't no longer have like anything.
Compassion.
We don't have any compassion, just like you were saying. That's
Yeah.
when you talked about the mental health, the drug problems. These things have to be, these
Assessed,
things has to
man.
be assessed and
Absolutely.
taken care of
Yeah.
before you are released. If you're taking care of it when you get home, there's just another roadblock in your way
Not-
to get back to where you need to
Right,
be.
and not just be tagged a number
Yeah.
like some cattle, and let me make a profit off of
Yeah.
you. Let all these major corporations investing in these prisons. If y'all doing all that, why are y'all not investing in the people?
That's scary
So
to me
you-
again.
You see what I'm saying?
So I mean, there's a way that is, I absolutely understand when people say we need to lock certain people up. I still stand as an individual. That's not the movement's perspective. It doesn't have to be the movement's perspective. But part of my fuel in the work is that I actually don't want to go to cages.
Absolutely.
And what often gets lost, like for a lot of people who can't communicate abolition very well, is that they want to remove a single component of the system, which is the prison. Let's just get rid of prisons. I want to do that, but I'm also clear that when you take a step back and look at the whole system, there's a reason that's a cog in the system. The prison is a section. It's a part of the machine. I want to dismantle the whole machine.
Yeah, for sure.
And the whole machine is so much bigger than prison, but it is fueled and funded and supported by the same corporations that, like Starbucks and Target and Walmart use hella private prison labor.
Yes.
Get rid of if prisons. I want to renegotiate my relationship to corporate entities that are funding and supporting the prison industry.
And even these like the police departments, and I'm talking about in Indiana, and the paramedics, their belts and stuff are getting made at Wabash.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So we have to, as you alluding to, and I'm sorry for being rude, but it's a reason why these prisons are functioning the way they. It's
in the community
economic.
at large don't understand. Even now in the state of Indiana, a lot of people have been to CCA and they don't even understand what that stands for. That's corporate corrections. That means we guaranteeing a certain amount of people in those beds every year. How do you guarantee that without some type of injustice going on?
And that in most of those corporate corrections, 80% of their revenue is from immigration, right? So again, if I want to be an abolitionist, I got to take seriously that a large scale of our private prison industry is exclusively for immigration. But I also want to give a shout out to my guy Mike Milton in St. Louis, because there's a way that we got to address the system. There's also a different kind of work that I think is really important, and I don't think this is the work of the Validus Movement. Although I'd love to be in a relationship with somebody that does it here. But Mike Milton runs a community center in St. Louis that does a incredible restorative justice work. And recently, through their restorative justice programming, got a judge to drop a 50-year murder charge because the individual who committed the act of violence went through restorative justice practice with the family who was impacted. That family showed up in court and said he better not see one day of prison, and got 50 years dropped off of a charge.
That's that hit home to me because one of my first cousin, and bro don't even know this. He been incarcerated since I think I was 17 and he was 19. He did rob a place that he worked at, and the young lady said something to him, and he shot her, and she died. And I'm talking about he's been a model citizen since
prison.
Since he's been in prison. He has never had any disciplinary charges, never had any problems. Every time he goes up for parole, he's tried to reach out to the family. Every time he's been up for parole, I'm 48 years old. That means more than half my life he's been locked up for this crime.
Yeah.
And although I do sympathize with the family, I do understand that people have to be rehabilitated. Again, I go back to that, and that's scary to think that we just house people and throw them away.
We have to look at each person on an individual basis.
Individual basis.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
hold on. Let me back us up, because then we look at the system, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'm so upset I don't remember the author's name, but there's a author who writes about ending mass incarceration who says, really talking about restorative work and why we got to challenge the system. And she says, someone who participates or expresses violence is never the first time they have experienced violence.
Mm.
And so
That's a new Jim Crow, right?
no, it's not. It's Michelle Alexander. It's not hers, and I'm forgetting who's. She might have quoted it. But when we define this again, when we look beyond mass incarceration and the system of prisons, we also have to take into account that violence can also be structural.
Absolutely.
So when you're in a community who had all of its resources intentionally plundered and was redlined, and then funneled a bunch of bad decisions, and then you grew up in a broken, fractured home that's been traumatized, and you have a set of choices that all look like violence in a context that has experienced violence, and then you produce said violence, and then you get punished for it.
Yeah. When it wasn't your fault in the beginning.
You didn't get harmed the first time, right?
Yeah.
You know, people who participate in domestic violence, they've seen it done.
They witnessed
before.
it. They witnessed it. Yeah.
Like, and there is a way in which, if we get serious about structural change, is we have to look at all the different ways that structural violence plays out. Again, I want to get rid of the jailhouse. I want to get rid of the prison yard. But we can fight for that and also take into account that someone who has caused harm that gets sent there has been a victim of structural harm.
Yes.
And been a victim of interpersonal harm before that happens. And if we don't have anything to say about those conditions, then we'll be ineffective at addressing the conditions inside.
Man, that's a great analysis. So I know you gotta get going, man. And
Man, thank you so much, Josh, man. This been eye-opening, man.
And is it something that you would like for Barz2Brickz to be able to help push Validus? How can we
Yes.
do that?
Yeah,
And please tell the audience how to get at you and how to be able to be a participant in Validus.
Yeah. So holla at us on Instagram. We are the Validus Movement, all one word, VALIDUS Movement. We got a bit of a runway now, and I hope y'all can continue to push this from the show. But Thursday, May 20, let me double check that date so I can say this correctly. I'll make sure I get this date right.
We getting
May
that date out here
29th.
this time.
May 29th at 6:30, we're having a public action.
It's gonna be on the screen.
You know, we're gonna have people from the Validus Movement be on our agenda team and the media team talking about why they want to build power, the change we want to make. And public actions are places of pretty significant tension. We're pushing for change, pushing for clear policy demands, and we got some stuff cooking. So it's a beautiful day. Mike gonna be speaking somewhere at that event. He don't know that yet, but I do.
I would love that.
And Corey gonna be there too. So definitely pull up with us and come watch how we build power.
Absolutely. Thank you, Josh. And again, man, whatever I need to do to assist, I'm here. Appreciate it.
That, man.
Another episode of Barz2Brickz, About My Money TV. Mikey Swisher, Josh of Validus Movement, we really appreciate you again for coming back, saving me, because this was a powerful and we needed this, man. Thank you again.
Thank you, bro.
Absolutely.
Bruh. Hey, man, we here. We ain't have to kill nobody. We ain't robbing nobody. We ain't lying.